Hi everyone, it's Joe from Homegrown Musician and welcome back to another video. So in today's episode, we're going to be talking about how to make your first home recording. So what you need, what the steps you have to go through, how do you make it sound good. So before we get started, remember to like, share and subscribe as it would massively help the channel grow. So the first thing you got to think about is what gear do you need to make a home recording. So I actually made an episode on this about 2 episodes ago, however I'll give a quick recap for those who haven't watched it, and for those who have you can skip to the next section. So the essential equipment that you're going to need to make your first home recording is as follows: a computer, Mac or PC, doesn't really matter, an interface, a microphone, obviously, a DAW or music software, something to monitor back on, and cables to connect everything together. So specifically, at least one XLR cable and possibly some monitor cables too. So once you've plugged everything in, you can start turning stuff on. So the first step is to turn your interface on. Don't turn your speakers on before you turn your interface on, or you'll send a massive pop through them. So don't do that. So turn your interface on, wait a second or two, then turn your speakers on. Now while that's plugged in, load up your DAW. So most DAWs will detect what interface we're using by default. If they don't, however, go into preferences, go into audio and look at what interface you're using. Now this does vary from software to software, but there will be something like this. So it's normally under preferences and it's normally under the sub-tab of audio. So once this has all been sorted out, you can start to plug your microphone in. So take your XLR cable and plug it into your first input of your interface. Now, load up an audio channel in whichever software you're using and find the input section. So again, this will probably be in a different place, door to door dependent, but they all work in the same way with input and output options. So find your input section, find input 1. So it's pretty self-explanatory. If you've plugged into input 1 on your interface, it's input 1 in the door. If you plugged into input 5, it's input 5 in the door, number to number. Now, certain microphones use this thing called phantom power, which basically just gives them an extra boost. So condensers use this. So it'll be on the front of your interface as a little switch or a little button. Just press that before you start messing about with the gain, otherwise you can send large pops through your speakers and it doesn't do them any good in the long run. So now, we should have our computer turned on, with your interface fully working, your speakers plugged in, your DAW loaded up, and a microphone plugged in and correctly patched. So we're pretty much ready to go. So the next step, get a musician. So for this example, I want to record the holiest of all instruments, the didgeridoo. However, as a talentless hack, I can't actually play one, so we're gonna need to attract a didgeridoo player. Now luckily for you and me, I know that didgeridoo players love San Miguel's. Don't try Budweiser, don't try Guinness, they're having none of it. Has to be San Miguel's. So leave a nice cookie crumb trail leading to the chair where you want them to sit down and play. Eventually, within about 20 to 30 minutes, you'll attract a didgeridoo player. They'll pick up all the San Miguel's before they find the best one sitting on the chair. They'll sit down, crack it open, take a swig, and you're ready to go. So now we've got our performers sitting where we want them, the next step is to set the volume levels or the gain. So put the microphone roughly where it's going to be. Don't worry about specifics just yet, we'll get to that later, we're just setting levels. Then get your performer to play the loudest thing they're going to be playing so you know the maximum volume they're going to be hitting. So slowly start turning your gain up until it hits -12 to -9 on your meter. Now you might need to input monitor or record monitor, otherwise you won't get any audio in. So if you've got silence a minute, that's probably the reason why. Now the reason we're aiming for -12 to -9 is because that's a nice full signal. It's not too quiet, but it gives us a bit of space, so if the performer plays too loud in the actual recording, we're not going to distort. So as I'm sure you can imagine, recording with a microphone isn't just as simple as putting something in front of an instrument and expecting it to sound great. Mic choice and mic position massively impact the sound of your recording. So now we've set our gain, we're really going to focus on where our microphone goes. So the few things you've got to take into consideration are: where is the sound coming from in the instrument? Obviously in the case of a didgeridoo, the majority of the sound will come out of the sound hole at the bottom, but that doesn't mean all of the sound will, so experiment with placing the microphone at different parts of the instrument to see how it sounds. The next thing you've got to think about is distance. So at the minute, I'm sitting right next to the microphone and it sounds very present and very clear. However, all the way over here, I sound much more distant. You can tell I'm further away from the microphone in the room. So another thing to think about with distance is the proximity effect. So if you're using a cardioid microphone, which I won't go into too much detail on, but it basically means point straight forwards, the closer you are to a sound source, the more bass you'll get, so it'll sound deeper and fuller. However, if you get too close, it'll start sounding a bit chubby and a bit muffled, which might not be what you want. And then finally, you've got to think about axes. So if you point a microphone directly at a sound source, that's known as being on axes. However, if you tilt it away from a sound source, that's known as being off axes. So if your sound is coming across a little bit brittle or a bit too harsh, you might want to try tilting the microphone off axes, as this might make it sound a bit more pleasant. Now, distance, position, and axes aren't the only three things that you need to think about when recording something. However, they are important factors, so if you're not getting quite the right sound, try changing one of these three things to see how it makes a difference. So now you've set your microphone position, we're on to the final step, actually pressing record and getting your musician to play what you want them to. Well, hopefully. So up until this point, you probably haven't been record armed. So basically, there'll be a little red R really close to your input monitor button. Just hit that, press record in your DAW, and you'll be ready to go. So, Digman, play something smooth and groovy. However, for today's video, that'll be everything. So please remember to like, share, subscribe, comment. I'd massively appreciate it, and it'd really help the channel grow. Don't forget to check Ollie out. I'll link to him in the description. He makes my backing music pretty much all the time, and he's been today's Dig player, so he's a top bloke. Go check him out, he's ace. Remember to keep a lookout for future videos and updates on the channel, and I really hope to see you soon.